Yeah, Nancy was on.
She was, but I thought she left.
Yeah, Nancy was on earlier.
Oh, was she? I didn't see her.
Yeah, she was on earlier.
Where did she go? What happened to her?
Valerie, a question?
Yes.
Valerie,
Yes.
when the reading has the scripture citing at the end of the reading, do we read that or not?
No, that was just for your edification.
Okay, thank you.
I had the same question.
I thought I put that in my email, but maybe I missed it. Sorry.
We don't read emails, we just, Thank you.
Thank you. I wonder if Robin thought it was at 7 too.
I have sent this email to quite a few people at my church.
She's joining.
So I don't know if they'll join.
Well, I appreciate you doing that. Hey, Robin.
Yeah.
I don't see everybody.
Nancy's rejoining.
There's Nancy Compton.
There's Nancy.
Robin. Hi, Robin.
Hi. Here's Robin, yeah.
The nice doggy.
Nancy. That's Tom's.
That's Tom's doggy.
Okay.
But I don't know. Oh, no, school.
You can
There's another doggy.
click on speaker.
You can't get rid
Say
of
hi,
it
Kaylee.
on the side.
You can.
Say hi. Hey, Kaylee. Say hi, Kaylee.
There. And then put that. You can put that to the top.
All our animals are sleeping.
Yeah. All of our big dogs are sleeping.
Okay. And start.
Okay.
This one has aura magnus, better
Just a
known as
second
big
until we
mouth. Big mouth.
Well, I want to welcome everyone to our Maundy Thursday service this evening. In addition to hearing the story from Scripture, we will be using images of art to help us experience this story in a new way. If you would, pay attention to the images as they come across your screen so that you can focus your attention on encountering God. Let us join now in worship.
And our service will be the readings.
Nancy?
Nancy, you can start us out. Nancy, you still there?
Don't hear her.
No, and I don't see her.
She's not on there now.
Nope. She was there earlier. She was a few times, but not now. Do you want me to start it off?
Yeah, you want to read her part? That would be great. Thank you.
Okay. During supper, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands, and that he had come from God and was going to God, got up from the table, took off his outer robe, and tied a towel around himself. Then he poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with the towel that was tied around him. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, Lord, are you going to wash my feet? Jesus answered, You do not know now what I'm doing, but later you will understand. Peter said to him, You will never wash my feet, Jesus answered. Unless I wash you, you have no share with me. Simon Peter said to him, Lord, not my feet only, but also my hands and my head. Jesus said to him, One who has bathed does not need to wash except for the feet, but is entirely clean. And you are clean, though not all of you. For he knew who was to betray him. For this reason, he said, Not all of you are clean. After he had washed their feet, had put on his robe, and had returned to the table, he said to them, Do you know what I have done to you? You call me teacher and Lord, and you are right, for that is what I am. So if I, your Lord and teacher, where did I go here? If I, Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have set you an example, that you also should do as I have done to you. I give you a new commandment, that you love one another. Just as I have loved you, you also should love one another. By this everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another.
What did you hear in this text that spoke to you? Or which character do you most relate to in this text? Feel free to share your answers aloud or to think about them to yourselves. What did you hear in this text that spoke to you? Or which character do you most relate to in this text?
For me, this is Mike. I've always related to Peter because Peter was incredibly strong and he's incredibly faithful, but he was incredibly human. And the fact that he was a fisherman and he saw things in a two-dimensional way. And Jesus came to him and said, You're going to be learning things that you may not understand, but I will teach you. So I most relate to Peter.
I noticed the end, the new commandment, in part because when I think of this story, I don't think of that. I think of the whole foot washing thing and Peter getting up and saying, hey, wash all of me. And Jesus saying, no, don't have to do that. And I think I've kind of missed that the new commandment is part and parcel of this story.
Right.
Anyone else?
Hello?
Is that Nancy?
No, who do I have on? Hello?
Hello?
Mom, you are online. Just stay online, Mom.
Okay, dear.
Thanks for joining us.
That's my mom from Arkansas.
That's Mike's mom from Arkansas.
Wonderful.
Glad to have you with us.
What's her name?
Bonnie.
Marnie?
Well, welcome.
Yes.
Welcome. Bill, do you want to continue?
Sure. When it was evening, Jesus took his place with his disciples, and while they were eating, he said, Truly, I tell you, one of you will betray me.
Who? Who will betray you? They all wondered. Surely not me. Tell us who, Jesus.
The one who dips his hand into the dish with me.
But that's all of us. We all shared
After the meal, Jesus said to them, "You will all become deserters because of me this night. For it is written, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered. But after I am raised, I will go ahead of you to Galilee." Peter said to him, "Though all become deserters because of you, I will never desert you." Jesus said to him, "Truly I tell you, this very night, before the cock crows, you will deny me 3 times." Peter said to him, "Even though I must die with you, I will not deny you." And so said all the disciples.
Then Jesus went to them to a place called Gethsemane, and he said to his disciples, "Sit here while I go over there and pray." He took with him Peter and 2 sons of Zebedee, and began to be grieved and agitated. And then he said to them, "I am deeply grieved, even to death. Remain here and stay awake with me." And going a little farther, he threw himself on the ground and prayed, "My Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me, yet not what I but want, you want." Then he came to the disciples and found them sleeping, and he said to Peter, "So you could not stay awake with me for 1 hour? Stay awake and pray that you may not come into the time of trial. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak." Again he went away for the second time and prayed, "My Father, if this cannot pass unless I drink it, you will be done." Again he came and found them sleeping, for their eyes were very heavy. So leaving them again, he went away and prayed for the 3rd time, saying the same words. Then he came to the disciples and said to them, "Are you still sleeping and taking your rest? See, the hour is at hand, and the Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Get up, let us be going. See, my betrayer is at hand."
While he was still speaking, Judas, one of the 12, arrived. With him was a large crowd with swords and clubs from the chief priests and the elders of the people. Now the betrayer had given them a sign saying, "The one I will kiss is the man. Arrest him." At once he came up to Jesus and said, "Greetings, Rabbi," and kissed him. Jesus said to him, "Friend, do what you are here to do." Then they came and laid hands on Jesus and arrested him. Suddenly, one of those with Jesus put his hand on his sword, drew it, and struck the slave of the high priest, cutting off his ear. Then Jesus said to him, "Put your sword away into its place, for all who take the sword will perish by the sword. Do you think that I cannot appeal to my Father, and he will at once send me more than 12 legions of angels? Then how would the scriptures be fulfilled, which say it must happen this way?" At that hour, Jesus said to the crowd, "Have you come out with swords and clubs to arrest me, as though I were a bandit? Day after day, I sat at the temple preaching, and you did not arrest me. But all this has taken place so that the scriptures of the prophets may be fulfilled." Then all the disciples deserted him and fled.
Those who had arrested Jesus took him to Caiaphas, the high priest, in whose house the scribes and elders had gathered. But Peter was following him at a distance, as far as the courtyard of the high priest, and going inside, he sat with the guards in order to see how this would end. Now the chief priests and the whole council were looking for false testimony against Jesus, so that they might put him to death. But they found none, though many false witnesses came forward. At last 2 came forward and said, "This fellow said, 'I am able to destroy the temple of God and to build it in 3 days.'" The high priest stood up and said, "Have you no answer? What is it that they testify against you?" But Jesus was silent. Then the high priest said to him, "I put you under oath before the living God. Tell us if you are the Messiah, the Son of God." Jesus said to him, "You have said so. But I tell you, from now on you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power and coming on the clouds of heaven." Then the high priest tore his clothes and said, "He has blasphemed. Why do we still need witnesses? You have now heard his blasphemy. What is your verdict?" They answered, "He deserves death." Then they spat in his face and struck him. And some slapped him, saying, "Prophesy to us, you Messiah. Who is it that struck you?"
I was sitting outside in the court. A girl came to him and said, "You also were with Jesus the Galilean." But he denied it before all of them, saying, "I do not know what you're talking about." When he went out to the porch, another servant girl saw him, and she said to the bystanders, "This man was with Jesus of Nazareth." Again, he denied it with an oath, "I do not know the man." After a little while, the bystanders came up and said to Peter, "Certainly you are also one of them, for your accent betrays you." Then he began to curse, and he swore an oath, "I do not know the man." At that moment, the cock crowed. Then Peter remembered what Jesus had said, "Before the cock crows, you will deny me 3 times." And he went out and wept bitterly.
When the morning came, all the chief priests and the elders of the people conferred together against Jesus in order to bring about his death. They bound him, led him away, and handed him over to Pilate, the governor.
When Judas, his betrayer, saw that Jesus was condemned, he repented and brought back the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and the elders. He said, "I have sinned by betraying innocent blood." But they said, "What is that to us? See to it yourself." Throwing down the pieces of silver in the temple, he departed, and he went and hanged himself. But the chief priests, taking the pieces of silver, said, "It is not lawful to put them into the treasury, since they are blood money." After conferring together, they used them to buy the potter's field as a place to bury foreigners. For this reason, that field has been called the field of blood to this day. Then was fulfilled what had been spoken through the prophet Jeremiah. And they took the 30 pieces of silver, the price of the one on whom a price had been set, on whom some of the people of Israel had set a price, and they gave them for the potter's field, as the Lord commanded me.
Now Jesus stood before the governor, and the governor asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus said, "You say so." But when he was accused by the chief priests and elders, he did not answer. Then Pilate said to him, "Do you not hear how many accusations they make against you?" But he gave him no answer, not even to a single charge, so that the governor was greatly amazed.
Is there music?
No.
Now at the festival, he's a prisoner for the crowd, anyone whom they wanted. At that time, they had a notorious prisoner called Jesus Barabbas. So after they had gathered, Pilate said to them, "Whom do you want me to release? Jesus Barabbas, or Jesus who is called the Messiah?" For he realized it was out of jealousy that they had handed him over. While he was sitting on the judgment seat, his wife sent word to him, "Have nothing to do with me, for I have suffered a great deal because of a dream about him. Now the chief priests and the elders persuaded the crowds to ask for Barabbas and to have Jesus killed. The governor again said to them, "Which of the two do you want me to release for you?" And they said, "Barabbas." Pilate said to them, "Then what should I do with Jesus who is called the Messiah?" All of them said, "Let him be crucified." Then he asked, "Why? What evil has he done?" But they shouted all the more, "Let him be crucified." So when Pilate saw that he could do nothing, but rather that a riot was beginning, he took some water and washed his hands before the crowd, saying, "I am innocent of this man's blood. See to it yourselves." Then the people as a whole answered, "His blood be on us and on our children." So he released Barabbas for them, and after flogging Jesus, he handed him over to be crucified.
Then the soldiers of the governor took Jesus into the governor's headquarters, and they gathered the whole cohort around him. They stripped him and put a scarlet robe on him, and after twisting some thorns into a crown, they put it on his head. They put a reed in his right hand and knelt before him and mocked him, saying, "Hail, King of the Jews!" They spat on him and took the reed and struck him on the head. After mocking him, they stripped him of the robe and put his own clothes on him. Then they led him away to crucify him.
As they went out, they came upon a man from Cyrene named Simon. They compelled this man to carry his cross. And when they came to a place called Golgotha, which means place of a skull, they offered him wine to drink, mixed with gall. But when he tasted it, he would not drink it. And when they had crucified him, they divided his clothes among themselves by casting lots. Then they sat down there and kept watch over him. Over his head they put the charge against him, which read, "This is Jesus, the King of the Jews."
Who has believed what we have heard? And to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? For he grew up before him like a young plant, and like a root out of dry ground. He had no form or majesty that we should look at him, nothing in his appearance that we should desire him. He was despised and rejected by others, a man of suffering and acquainted with infirmity, And as one from whom others hide their faces, he was despised, and we held him of no account. Surely he was borne our infirmities and carried our diseases. Yet we accounted him stricken, struck down by God, and afflicted. But he was wounded for our transgressions, crushed for our iniquities. Upon him was the punishment that made us whole, and by his bruises we are healed. All we like sheep have gone astray. We have all turned to our own way, and the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. He was oppressed, and he was afflicted, yet he did not open his mouth. Like a lamb that is led to the slaughter, and like a sheep that before its shearers is silent, so he did not open his mouth. By a perversion of justice he was taken away. Who could have imagined his future? For he was cut off from the land of the living, stricken for the transgression of my people. They made his grave with the wicked and his tomb with the rich. Although he had done no violence, and there was no deceit in his mouth, yet it was the will of the Lord to crush him with pain. When you make his life an offering for sin, he shall see his offspring, and shall prolong his days. Through him the will of the Lord shall prosper. Out of his anguish he shall see light. He shall find satisfaction through his knowledge. The righteous one, my servant, shall make many righteous, and he shall bear their iniquities. Therefore I will allot him a portion with the great, and he shall divide spoil with the strong. Because he poured out himself to death, and it was numbered with the transgressors, yet he bore the sin of many, and made intercession for the transgressors.
Then 2 bandits were crucified with him, one on his right and one on his left. Those who passed by derided him, shaking their heads and saying, "You who destroy the temple and build it in 3 days, save yourself. If you are the Son of God, come down from the cross." In the same way, the chief priests also, along with the scribes and elders, were mocking him, saying, "He saved others. He cannot save himself. He is the King of Israel. Let him come down from the cross now, and we will believe in him. He trusts in God. Let God deliver him now, if he wants to, for he said, 'I'm God's son.'" The bandits who were crucified with him also taunted him in the same way.
From noon on, darkness came down over the whole land until 3 in the afternoon. At about 3 o'clock, Jesus cried out with a loud voice, "Eli, Eli, lema sabachthani?" What is my God, you have forsaken me?
I invite you all to join me in reading Psalm 22 responsively. My God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from saving me, so far from my cries of anguish?
My God, I cry out by day, but you do not answer. By night, but I find no rest.
Yet you are enthroned as the Holy One. You are the one Israel praises.
In you, our ancestors put their trust. They trusted, and you delivered them.
To you they cried out and were saved. In you they trusted and were not put to shame.
But I am a worm and not a man, scorned by everyone, despised by the people.
All who see me mock me. They hurl insults, shaking their heads. He trusts in the Lord, they say. Let the Lord rescue him. Let him deliver him, since he delights in him. Yet you brought me out of the womb. You'd made me trust in you, even at my mother's breast.
From birth I was cast on you. From my mother's womb you have been my God.
Do not be far from me, for trouble is near, and there is no one to help me. Many bulls surround me. Strong bulls of Bashan encircle me. Roaring lions that tear their prey open their mouths wide against me. I am poured out like water, and all my bones are out of joint. My heart has turned to wax. It has melted within me. My mouth is dried up like a potsherd, and my tongue sticks to the roof of my mouth. You lay me in the dust of death.
Dogs surround me. A pack of villains encircles me.
They pierce my hands and my feet. All my bones are on display. People stare and gloat over me. They divide my clothes among them and cast lots for my garment. But you, Lord, do not be far from me. You are my strength. Come quickly to help me. Deliver me from the sword, my precious life from the power of the dogs. Rescue me from the mouth of the lions. Save me from the horns of the wild oxen. I will declare your name to my people. In the assembly, I will praise you.
When some of the bystanders heard it, they said, "This man is calling for Elijah." At once, one of them ran and got a sponge, filled it with sour wine, put it on a stick, and gave it to him to drink. But the others said, "Wait, let's see whether Elijah will come to save him." Then Jesus cried again with a loud voice and breathed his last.
At that moment, the curtain of the temple was torn in two, from top to bottom. The earth shook, and the rocks were split. The tombs also were opened, and many bodies of the saints who had fallen asleep were raised. After his resurrection, they came out of the tombs and entered the holy city and appeared to many.
Truly, this man is God's son.
The true light that enlightens everyone came into the world through Christ.
Though the world was made through him, the world did not recognize him.
In him was life, and his life was the light of all.
The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness cannot overcome it.